In episode 8, Daniel's mother has come over to help out, and the LaRussos are all eating lunch when Daniel's really excited to tell her all about Robbie, his new protege. And through Robbie, he's realized how much he truly missed karate. But Amanda comes outside and says, I just got a call from the dealership that a bunch of sketchy guys on motorcycles were looking for Louie. And Louie, who's there, says, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. I met these bikers at an auto convention and we really hit it off. And when they found out who I was, we came up with this really great idea. LaRusso Luxury Motorcycles. But Daniel is not into that at all and yells at him saying, you can't use my name for business. Louie starts to apologize saying, I'm sorry, I'll make it up to you guys. And Amanda says, yeah, we've heard that before. But Daniel's mom sticks up for Louie, saying he made a mistake, let it go. But this infuriates Amanda. She screams at Daniel's mother, a mistake is when you leave the shop unlocked, which she's done plenty of times. But this is affecting our business, so why don't you keep out of it? Now, Daniel tries to make peacemaker because his mom's insulted at this point, saying she didn't mean what she said, but Amanda says, no, I meant what I said. We wouldn't have this problem in the first place if it wasn't for your mother insisting that we hire Louie. This sparks a big fight between everybody at the table. Now, over on the other side of town, Johnny's been training all the kids for the tournament, but he's decided to focus most of his attention on Miguel because he says, let's face it, you're my only shot. But during training one day, Miguel gets a text message from Samantha and he starts to crack up about it. And Johnny wants to know what's so funny and he says, oh, it's my girlfriend. She just sent me this photo. But when Johnny notices that it's Samantha, he says, whoa, is that Daniel LaRusso's daughter? And Miguel's a little surprised that Johnny even knows who she is. And he says, yeah. And Johnny says, let's go outside. I got to tell you something. So he tells him the whole backstory of his beef with Daniel LaRusso, how it started when him and his buddies went to the movies and there was these girls in front of them and they started throwing popcorn at him because it's an alpha move. But one of them stood up to the bullies, and she ended up being Allie, and Johnny was obsessed. He persisted and they started going out. But the summer before his senior year, they got in a fight, and Johnny thought that they would work it out, but then he noticed that Daniel LaRusso, the new kid in town, was hitting on her. So he went down to the beach to have a civil conversation with her, but Daniel kept butting in, so Johnny told him to get lost. Daniel then sucker punched Johnny, and Johnny beat the crap out of him, thinking that it was done. A few months later, though, at the school dance, he soaked him with a bunch of water, so Johnny and his buddies hunted him down. But little did they know, Daniel had his own little karate master who kicked the crap out of him and his friends. So they decided to settle their beef at the All Valley tournament, where Daniel won. But the big loss for Johnny was the fact that he lost Allie in the process. The whole reason he's telling him this is to tell him that the LaRussos cannot be trusted. That night, Johnny and Miguel head home, and they run into Miguel's mom, who invites Johnny over for dinner. And since Johnny had no real dinner plans, he says, okay. And at the table, Miguel's mom and his grandmother are asking Johnny about where he's from, getting kind of his backstory when Miguel gets a phone call from Samantha. And his mom excuses him so he can take it. And Samantha's a little on edge because of all the fighting that's going on in her family at the moment. But they're trying to make plans to go see a movie that weekend, although Miguel tells her Sunday's not going to work, I have training all day. And she goes, really? Training all day? She then says to him, you know, there's a lot of dojos in the valley. I was thinking maybe you could try training at another one. And this is coming out of left field for Miguel. He doesn't understand why she's saying it. And the reason why she's saying it is because earlier in the day, she had her dad, her grandmother, and her cousin for some reason telling her what bad people Cobra Kai are. Even though it's been years since Daniel squared off with these folks, Daniel doesn't think anything has changed. If you're part of Cobra Kai, you're bad news, and he instructs Samantha not to hang out with anyone from there, even though she knows plenty of good people that train there. But Miguel doesn't know any of this and says, no, I'd never turn my back on Sensei Lawrence. Their conversation, though, gets interrupted when Daniel asks for help because his mom and his wife are currently fighting. But then he sees that she's on the computer and says, who are you talking to? And instead of saying my boyfriend, she says, oh, it's nobody, just my lab partner. And that's kind of insulting to Miguel because they are dating. But over in the other room, dinner is continuing, and you find out Miguel's family's backstory. They're from Ecuador, and Miguel's mom got married at 18 and pregnant at an early age, but then she found out what her ex-husband did for a living, and she tells Johnny, let's just say he was a bad guy and I needed to get away. Johnny apologizes, but Miguel's mom says, don't apologize. You can't let the mistakes of the past determine your future. And that really resonates with Johnny. And when dinner's over, he heads to his apartment and decides to clean up his act. But first, he decides to clean up his actual apartment because it's a mess. The next day, he heads to Sid's place. And Sid thinks that he's there for another handout, but in fact, Johnny's there to give him back his money. Sid says, you'll be back for this next week, but Johnny says, no, I won't, Sid. Turns around and walks out. And man, does it feel good to be able to cut Sid out of his life. But he still needs to figure out a way to make amends with Robbie. And Robbie shows up for training at the LaRussos, but he ends up seeing Sam for the first time. And he is mesmerized because he's a guy with 2 eyeballs and she's gorgeous. Kind of fumbling over his words a little bit. But she thanks him for scratching the karate itch of her dad because if he didn't do it, she was going to have to. She tells him, enjoy the tree, and he doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. And Daniel says, you'll find out. Him and Daniel then head off to a really secluded, serene spot in the woods with a lake. and they start going through training because this is the perfect place for Robbie to focus. And one of the lessons is to do a bunch of kicks on a tree that's fallen over without falling off the tree. And Daniel tells Robbie, okay, after you've mastered these kicks and you don't fall down, come find me. And it takes a little bit, but Robbie's able to do it. And when he finds Daniel, Daniel is doing a one-armed handstand. But Robbie distracts him and Daniel falls over. And Daniel tells Robbie that that was the last thing that Mr. Miyagi taught him. It was this special kick that freed up two legs, and Daniel's never actually been able to pull it off. The fact that he actually got this close today is a big deal for him. But the next test is finding the car because they need to get back home. And when they get home, to Daniel's shock, his mom and his wife are getting along great because whatever Sam did at the mall worked. And Daniel invites Robbie over for dinner that night, and Robbie had no plan, so he stays. But unbeknownst to everybody, Miguel had planned to come over that day because he'd gone to the movies with Eli and Aisha, but he couldn't focus on the movie because of all the weird things that are going on with Sam. He knows that Daniel hates Cobra Kai and feels like if Daniel hates Cobra Kai, then ipso facto, Daniel would hate Miguel. And he knows that Sam is keeping a secret because he hasn't been invited over yet. But Aisha reassures him, I've known Mr. LaRusso my entire life. He's a great guy. Just talk to him. And Eli tells him, dude, just grow a set. Head over there. And it's worth mentioning that Eli, unaware of the backstory of Johnny, is throwing popcorn at the movie theaters. Really on-brand move for Cobra Kai. But through the peer pressure, Miguel heads over there, and he practices this whole script that he's going to say to Daniel, but when he peers around back, he sees the entire family eating dinner. And more importantly, he sees Robbie being really friendly with Sam. And since he has no context of what's going on, he feels like Sam has been hiding him from her family because he is the other guy. Now that night, his sensei, Johnny, had sat down to write Robbie a letter. He tried to call, but Robbie wasn't picking up the phone, and he doesn't do email or text, so he's going at old school. And he's writing this heartfelt letter about how he needs to change his life and how he realizes he made some mistakes when he hears glass shatter outside. And when he goes outside, he finds Louie and two bikers bashing up Johnny's Pontiac. When he asks them, what the hell are you doing? Louie says this is a message from Daniel LaRusso and continues to bash his car. But Johnny busts out some karate on the bikers and takes them all out. And then he focuses his attention on Louie, who says, whoa, man, we can work this out. But Johnny wants to know where Daniel lives. Louie tells him this had nothing to do with Daniel. This was all me. All that stuff I said, they were lies. But behind him, one of the bikers that got beat up says, hey, man, burn in hell. And he throws a lighter into Johnny's car, which has been doused with gasoline, and the car goes up in flames. And that infuriates Johnny. He once again jacks up Louie, saying, where does Daniel LaRusso live? And Louie gives up his address. Johnny hops on one of the motorcycles and heads off. Thank you so much for watching this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel. If you don't see the next video up in the corner, don't worry, I'll get it up in a couple days. Hit thumbs up if you liked the video, hit thumbs down if you didn't, and be nice in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel. If you don't see the next video up in the corner, don't worry, I'll get it up in a couple days. Hit thumbs up if you liked the video, hit thumbs down if you didn't, and be nice in the comments section.